Martin Jackson, and he was unquestionably dead. No chance he was getting up again. His black skin and the brass captain's bars on his collar were covered in blood from a long, jagged piece of metal that was stuck through his right eye and out the back of his skull. I didn't know him very well, but rumor around the department was that he would make chief one day. Just 40 years old and already a captain with a Ph.D. in criminal justice, he had the world at his feet. The department had spent millions on his training in anticipation of the great things he would do one day, and now all that potential was bleeding out across the fender of his patrol car. I stepped over the wall and poked around his corpse with my flashlight. There were empty shell casings all around him, and it was obvious he had gone down fighting. I was glad for that. It was somehow fitting for someone with his reputation for being bigger than life. The magazine in his gun still had 4 rounds in it. I thumbed off the live rounds and put them into my own gun, but he didn't have anything else I could use. I hesitated near the body, feeling like there was something else that needed to be done, but in the end I just got back into the traffic car and drove off. My own family was waiting. Chapter 14. I drove up the freeway, passing miles of cars massed into gridlock, and it felt like driving through my worst nightmare. From a distance, things looked normal, but close up, with the veneer pulled down, reality seemed to blur and bend. The freeway was flanked on both sides by strip malls and apartment buildings and gas stations and all the areas people gravitate toward in their daily routines. I figured most of the people injured on the highway would have wandered down into those areas, looking for help, which meant everything down there was absolutely unsafe. When I turned onto Mariner Boulevard, I saw a huge crowd of zombies milling around between the cars. There had to be hundreds of them. The intersection was completely choked up with wrecked cars, and I ended up driving through some bushes and across a gas station's landscaping just to get around it. Most of the zombies could only watch as I drove up the sidewalk on the other side of the street. I almost made it through the intersection without incident, but the sidewalk I was driving on ran out in front of the fish shack, where a group of about 10 zombies had gathered. I was stuck between them and wall-to-wall traffic. There was no way to go around them, and backing up would have put me right back where I started from. I used the takedown lights to flood the entire area ahead of me with light. The zombie out in front never even flinched. He didn't respond at all to the lights. I've never seen anyone look into the takedown lights and not have to turn their eyes away, but that zombie wasn't fazed. He didn't look away, but I did. His face was torn up, the whole lower half of his jaw gone. From his nose to his throat, his face was one gaping hole with clumps of dirt and shredded pieces of skin hanging on like pennants from the wound. His shirt was black with dried blood. Behind him, the other zombies were a knot of arms and faces. They were coming into the narrow gap between a low concrete wall and the traffic. I punched it. I hit the zombie with the shredded face and heard the plastic bumper crunch under his weight. He slammed face down into the hood and tumbled across it, straight toward me. His forehead hit the base of the windshield and cracked it, and as he rolled off to my left, he pulled one of the windshield wipers out of the cradle. I hit the others at a run, and I learned the hard way that it isn't easy to run over a crowd of people. One went under the car, and as I drove over the others, the front tires lost traction. The car seemed to hover in the air for just a moment before it rolled to the right, like it was gradually going over on its side. I went off the curb and hit the side of a minivan. The car bounced back onto the sidewalk, and I kept on the gas, pushing it through the bodies as fast as it would go. I could hear the car groaning with the impact. "Sorry, traffic," I said. "I fucked up your pretty toy." The back tires hit the ground with a thud as I rolled over their bodies, and the next thing I knew, I was looking at an empty sidewalk. I didn't let off the gas until I was past all the fast food places and into the residential part of Mariner. Once the road opened up, my mind cleared, and the only thing I could think of was holding April and Andrew again. It never even crossed my mind that what had happened to Carlos's wife and son could happen to my family. I was in denial, I guess. I entered my subdivision at the Alfoxden gate, and then went north on Swinburne to my street. But as I turned onto Lighthouse, all my confidence dissolved. The air in my street was heavy with smoke, and somebody's trash had been scattered all over the pavement. Little pieces of paper were blowing down the street and across the yards like empty promises. There was a car smashed up on a brick mailbox about 6 doors down, and a fat man in a white T-shirt and khaki pants was lying motionless, face down in the street. I drove around the body and stopped near my house. My front door was wide open, and I jumped out of the car in a panic. I didn't even bother to grab the shotgun. I drew my gun and hit the front door running. My neighbor was standing in the doorway to my kitchen. Most of his right arm was missing, and the side of his head had been torn away by somebody else's teeth. He never even got a chance to turn around. I put my pistol up to the side of his head and fired. A man and a woman I didn't recognize were on opposite ends of the couch in the living room, and I shot them both. "April! April!" I shouted it over and over again as I ran past one room to the next, getting more and more desperate with every empty room I searched. They were gone. I stood in our bedroom, my chest heaving and my mind uncertain, unable to focus on anything. I must have retraced the same paths through the house 5 or 6 times before it began to sink in that they weren't there. There were clothes on the floor, and Andrew's toys were all over the place. I looked at the mess and for some reason thought, garage. I hadn't checked the garage. I ran through the kitchen, over the body of my dead neighbor, and into the garage. It was empty. April's car was gone. I had bought her a brand-new black Nissan Xterra about 3 months after she got pregnant because I didn't want her driving around in that crappy Ford Taurus she drove all through college. But it was gone. I stood in the doorway and felt totally lost. I would have still been standing there looking at my empty garage if I hadn't heard the crunch of broken glass behind me. When I turned around, I saw 3 zombies walking toward me through the kitchen. The girl in front was wearing jeans and a torn blue bra and no shoes. Smeared tracks of blood spread across the floor from her feet. Behind her were 2 older men, and behind them I saw dim shapes moving into the house through the front door. I fired at the girl, and she went face down into the stove. The slide of my Glock locked back in the empty position, and I was forced to toss it aside. The others kept coming. I backed up into the garage. The 2 older men were just entering the laundry room between the kitchen and the garage when suddenly a 3rd zombie broke in between them, moving fast. I recognized him from around the neighborhood, though I didn't know his name. He was just somebody I saw jogging all the time. When he entered into the garage, he was practically at a run. He came up on me so fast I didn't even have time to throw a punch. He grabbed me, and his momentum knocked us both to the ground. I kicked at him. I slapped and punched him. I rolled one way and then the other, but he was incredibly strong, and he pinned me down so that I couldn't break his hold. He tried to bite me, but I forced the palm of my hand into his neck, pushing as hard as I could to keep his face away from me. His breath smelled like blood, and the skin around his neck felt wet. I tried flipping him, but no matter how hard I tried to move him, he wouldn't go over. We stayed locked up like that until some more zombies grabbed at my shoulder. The strong one on top of me shifted a little under the weight of the others, and that gave me the leverage that I needed to knock him off balance. After that, he went over easily, and when I threw him off me, he landed hard near the garage door. Before the others could grab me, I jumped up to my feet and ran for the rack of shovels on the far wall. I grabbed one and swung it at the zombie closest to me. It knocked him back, but he didn't go down. The shovel was too long, and I couldn't swing it with enough force to make it an effective weapon. Instead of swinging it again, I used it to jab at them, hooking them with the blade and pulling them away from the door. The fast mover came at me again just as I pushed the last one away from the door, but he couldn't force his way through the ambling crowd in time to reach me. I jumped through the doorway and pulled it closed behind me, then steadied myself on the washing machine while the zombies banged at the door behind me. From where I stood in the laundry room, I could see through the kitchen to the dining room and through the front windows to the street where the car was parked. I had left the headlights on, and I could see at least 3 zombies walking through the glare. They were cutting through the grass toward the house. The front door, I thought. Oh, crap! It's open. I ran through the kitchen and into the entryway just in time to push one of the zombies back onto the front steps and shut the door in his face. Through the window, I saw a small crowd gathering in the front yard. They formed around the headlights like moths. I could hear the ones in the garage banging on the door, and I stood there, breathing hard, feeling trapped. The front door was solid, but the door leading out to the garage was paper-thin. I doubted it would hold very long. I looked down on the floor and saw the night sights of my Glock glowing against the white tile of the kitchen floor, and I prayed that April and Andrew had managed to get out of here before things got out of control. Wait a second, I told myself. Eddie, you're an idiot. There's a whole case of bullets in the closet. Shotgun shells, too. Not those stupid beanbag rounds either. Real ones. I picked up my gun and ran to the closet in the master bedroom. It was a mess. All my gun stuff that I usually keep on the top shelf was on the floor, and the blue box that I kept my .45 in was missing. I pushed some stuff out of the way looking for it, but it wasn't there. That was good, I told myself. That meant April had it. At least she had heard enough of our conversation to get the gun, and that meant she had some protection with her. I had 3 magazines with me, and I topped each one off with 15 rounds apiece. I looked for my shotgun, but couldn't find it. Maybe April had that too, I thought. I did find my extra flashlight, though. With my Glock reloaded, I went back to the kitchen so I could clear the zombies out of the garage. I wasn't going to chance April and Andrew coming home to a house full of zombies if I could help it. I paused just outside the garage door to catch my breath. There wasn't any room to screw up on this, and I had to make every shot count. They weren't banging on the door anymore, but I knew all I had to do was open it and they would come pouring out. The fast-moving zombie was my biggest concern. He was stronger than the others, and I had already seen how he could force his way through the others. If he was anywhere near the door, he would have to be the first to get it. I kicked the door open, stepped back, and leveled my gun. There was a man on the other side of the door in blue jeans and a dark blue mock turtleneck. I shot him in the forehead and then turned my light past him, looking for the fast mover. He was towards the back. He had been facing the wrong way when I opened the door, but when he saw the light, he turned around and headed towards me at full speed. I shot 3 more zombies before he got all the way to the door, and I had another one in my sights when he broke through. He forced the one I was going to shoot to one side just as I pulled the trigger, and my shot ended up hitting a different zombie in the shoulder. He knocked the others out of the way in his rush to get me, and he was inside and had me backing up before I could fire off another shot. I had to backpedal to keep my distance, and it was impossible to do that and fire with any accuracy. My first shot hit him just below the nose. That shot would have stopped anybody else, but not him. It snapped his head back, but the rest of him kept coming forward. I fired at him again, and hit at the center of his left eye. That put him down on the ground, but it didn't put him out completely. He was still twitching, jerking his shoulders like he was in a seizure and trying to get back on his feet. I fired 3 more shots at point-blank range, turning his head into a puddle of soup. By that time, the others had filtered into the kitchen. It was exactly the situation I'd hoped to avoid, because now they were spread out, coming around both sides of the island, with plenty of room to move. I had to keep moving and shooting at the same time, keeping my eyes on targets coming from 2 directions. By the time I put the last one down, I had a trail of bodies spread out across 3 rooms, and brass casings all over the place. The magazine in my gun was empty. It had taken me 16 rounds to put down 10 zombies, which was a pretty bad ratio. Shaking my head, I swapped out magazines and went back to the closet to load up on more ammunition. I took one last look around the bedroom, and then walked into the hall. As I was walking by Andrew's room, I accidentally kicked one of his toys, a phone shaped like a puppy that bobbed its head up and down as you dragged it by a leash. It started singing "London Bridge is Falling Down," and the song grabbed me by the heart. It's funny how the smallest things can cause such massive storms in the mind. Andrew hardly ever played with that damned toy, but the sound of it was enough to awake half a year's worth of memories in me. I found myself turning the corner into his room, looking at the diaper bin and the sock puppets and the little blue turkey baster-looking thing that we used to clean out his nose, and I really started to hurt. It made me wonder how anyone could live through losing a child. My Adam's apple pumped up and down in my throat like a piston, and I tried to push down the grief. I had no idea where April and Andrew were, and the stress of not knowing was breaking me. They were still alive, waiting for me somewhere out there in the night. I believed that sincerely. But the thought of them ending up like Carlos's wife and son kept nagging at me until I was ready to take one bullet out of my gun and put it in my pocket to keep for myself, because there wasn't going to be any more me if there wasn't going to be any more them. I closed my eyes and thought of my wife and son while the sound of London Bridge falling down faded to silence in the hallway behind me. Chapter 15. I stood in Andrew's room for a long time. There were still zombies in the front yard, and I still had to get the extra ammunition from my closet to the car out in the street. But moving took so much effort, and I was so tired. Finally, I don't know how much later, I straightened my uniform and went to the living room window so I could look out into the front yard. The 3 zombies I had seen earlier were still there. They stayed close to the car, attracted to the light, I guess. Luckily, none of them were fast movers. I went outside and put the 3 of them down in quick order. Then I moved all the ammunition from the closet to the car. It wasn't until I was out on the road looking for empty lanes to work through that I realized I had no idea where I wanted to go or what I was supposed to do. When I worked dog watch in the Northwest Division, I used to go to the Exxon at the corner of Sereno and Bud. They gave cops free sodas there, and they had an office in the back where I sometimes went to catch up on my reports. Miles and miles of roadway disappeared beneath my wheels, and I drifted aimlessly, like a cloud of dust in a desert windstorm, until somehow I found myself in the parking lot of that Exxon. When I put the car in park, I realized that I had driven 15 miles at least, and yet had absolutely no memory of it. Where the memory should have been was a hole, swirling with grief and uncertainty. I stopped so that I was facing the building and stared at it for a second before I realized there was something wrong with it. The power was on. The lights inside the store were still on, and there were people inside. 3 of them. I got out of the car and ran to the front door, but as I got closer I saw that they were zombies. They had that recognizable half-dead walk. The door was locked. When I tried to pull it open, one of the zombies came up to it and slapped on the other side of the glass. Behind him on the floor was a puddle of blood, and beyond that, coming toward the door, was an older man with red, sunken cheeks and no hair, dressed in a clerk's uniform. The 3rd zombie was near the beer and ice cream freezers. I walked down to the far side of the window for a better look at the rest of the store. When I did finally make entry, I didn't want to be surprised by an unseen zombie. The 2 at the door followed me. I watched them approach, and then moved down to the other side of the store once they blocked my view. I stared at the man near the beer. There was a transparent reflection of my face in the glass, and just beyond that were the grotesque vacuous remains of a man so thoroughly numbed by what his life had been like that he couldn't take his eyes off of the beer, even as a zombie. Wondering what Ken Stoller would have thought of that man's consciousness, I tapped on the glass, but he didn't respond. I banged my fist against the glass, and that did it. He turned, and in an instant I saw that almost all of his face was missing. The skin had been completely torn away, and though he was wearing a flannel shirt, there was so much blood that it was difficult to tell where his body ended and the cloth began. I looked away, suppressing a gag. Out of the corner of my eye I saw him approach the glass, but it was obvious that he couldn't see me. He walked in my direction, but not quite at me. He didn't stop walking until he ran into the glass about 2 feet to the right of me. By the time the other 2 zombies had made it to my end of the store, I had a plan. I picked up the trash can near the front door and threw it into the window on the opposite side of the store. The glass window exploded all over the store's floor, and I was able to waltz right in. I was completely inside, gun drawn, and waiting for them by the time the zombies were halfway across the sales floor. I shot the first 2 and then walked over to the zombie without a face. He was reaching for me, or at least where his addled senses told him I was, but he was really nowhere close. I put a bullet in his head and left him on the floor next to the candy aisle. Then I walked over to the soda section and grabbed a Diet Coke. I went to the windows and leaned against the glass, watching my reflection and thinking about everything that had happened. Off in the distance, I could see an orange haze hugging the horizon and grayish-black smoke clouds piling up to the sky. The city was really burning. Beside me was the overstock bin where they kept the cartons of cigarettes. I glanced at it, and then did a fast double-take. Usually they lock the cigarettes up so people can't steal them, but the doors weren't padlocked like normal. They were wide open. Anyone could just reach in and... It had been over a year since my last smoke. I had been cigarette-free ever since that morning when I came home from a late call and saw April sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water in front of her, and the most thoroughly puzzled expression I have ever seen on her face. That very minute I knew something special was happening to our lives, and when she told me she was pregnant, I went out to my car and crumpled up my pack of cigarettes. That was the last pack I thought I would ever smoke. But now as I looked at carton upon carton of Marlboro Lights, I figured there was no better time than the end of the world to start smoking again. I opened the bin, took out a pack, and walked over to the registers for a lighter. My hands were shaking when I lit it up. But oh, that old familiar taste. I breathed it in slowly, letting the flavors fill up my lungs slowly so I wouldn't choke. It was like heaven to feel that nicotine rush again. I felt lightheaded and giddy and kind of dizzy all at the same time. I blew out the smoke above my head and watched it grow into wreaths. Then, from behind me, I heard an amused voice say, "I thought you gave that junk up." Chapter 16. Marcus! I knew that voice the moment I heard it. It was Marcus Acosta, my old district partner before I transferred to West. "Eddie," he said. God, he was so calm about it. He wasn't in uniform. He was wearing blue jeans and a heavy black jacket, his pistol tucked into an off-duty holster and his police radio in his back pocket. He stood there with his arms crossed, a twisted, devilish smile on his face. It had been 3 months at least since I had seen him last. Police work is like that. The shifts are so screwed up that if you don't work with someone every day, you never see them. And yet there he was, standing in the middle of all that broken glass and smiling like he had just done something naughty. And I couldn't help but smile myself. One look at him was enough to wipe out an awful lot of pain. He kicked some of the glass around with his toe as he looked at the bodies on the floor and said, "So, zombies." "Yep," I said. "I have to confess, I didn't see that one coming." Then he smiled again. "It looks like you've had a rough night." "Yep. You?" He shrugged. "Are you in that traffic car?" "Yeah." "Looks like you wrecked it." "Yeah." I looked out to the parking lot and didn't see any other cars besides mine. "You have a car around here?" "It's about 4 blocks west of here." "Your pickup?" "No, that's back at the station. I was in a marked unit." "What happened?" "I wrecked it." He walked around the store, looking at the bodies, making sure they were all down for good. When he came to the old bald guy in the clerk's uniform, he said, "Hey, you shot Gummers." "Who?" "Gummers." He kicked the dead man's foot. "Friend of yours?" "No. He was the new guy here." Started about 2 months ago. Man, that guy talked and talked and talked. Drove me nuts. Gummers? Ain't got a tooth in his head. And he curled his lips over his teeth and smacked his lips together. You know, Gummers. Got it, I said. Say, how come you're not in uniform? Uniform's back in the truck. I heard all about this on the TV when I woke up, so I came in early. By the time I got to the station, everything had already gone to hell. And by the way, I don't recommend going to the Northwest Division Station. That bad? Most of the B shift is dead. I nodded. How about out west? About the same. What did the news have to say? Nothing, really. At first it was riots and looting, that kind of thing. Nobody on TV said anything about zombies, though. First time I heard zombies was when I got to work. What else did they say? Sounds like it's happening all along the Gulf Coast. They're saying it's because of that stuff down in Houston. The news didn't really say anything else. Besides, all the local channels were off the air by the time I got to the station. How does that happen? How does everything crap out like that so fast? He shook his head at Gummer's corpse and said, I'm surprised you're not at home. Already been there. And? They weren't there. The car's gone. I don't know where they went to. I don't even know if they're okay. You haven't talked to her at all? Just for a second or two, earlier. I don't know how long ago. A lot's happened. But you did talk to her? She sounded scared. Well, that makes two of us. He watched me closely for a moment. Eddie, he said, she's a smart girl. I nodded. I hope she'll know what to do. I'm scared for her, and for Andrew. They'll be okay, Eddie. I hope so, I said, and a long, uncomfortably empty silence followed. I changed the subject. We ought to find a new car, Marcus. That one out there has about had it. Where did you get that one? Found it. You haven't been downtown yet? No. I heard all the emergency tones going off on the downtown channel, though. Sounds like they got it bad. I think everybody has it bad, he said. Still, we probably ought to head that way. What on earth for? Headquarters. If there's some sort of plan in the works, they'll know about it. What makes you think headquarters is still operational? All the radios went down. Yeah, but they may have only lost the mainframe. The Emergency Operations Command Center is probably still secure. They're supposed to have dedicated lines to Homeland Security and FEMA. Maybe, I said doubtfully, but I don't plan on cruising halfway around the city just to find out. If there's any chance at all that I can find April, that's what I'm going to do. But do you have any idea where to start looking? You said yourself that you don't know where they went. They could be anywhere. Yeah, and wherever they are, that's where I want to be too. Fair enough, he said. We'll look for them together. What about your car? It'll run, but the right front tire's about to shred away to nothing. It's rubbing bad. Then the first thing we do is find another car. What about yours? Eddie, I put it halfway up an oak tree. Oh, and there weren't any left at Northwest either. That figures, I said. You think we'll have a better chance downtown? Yeah, I was thinking we could go to Fleet and get one of the cars out of the ready lot. They've got hundreds of Crown Vics out there just waiting to get the decals put on them. That made sense, I admitted. And while we're down there, we ought to go over to headquarters. It's only a couple of blocks away. It couldn't hurt. From there we can go wherever you want us to go. You really want to check out headquarters? I think we need to. Look, if they do have a plan, it's bound to include a safe area for civilians. Let's say you find April and Andrew. What then? You need a place to put them where you know they'll be safe. You can't do that if you don't have a plan. That's true. It did sound like a good idea. It was better than the plan I had, anyway, which was no plan at all. Can we get to the freeway from here? He smiled. This is still my district, remember? Okay, I said, and stepped aside. After you. Thank you. Chapter 17. We stepped through the shattered store windows and into the parking lot. It was starting to get really cold. I shivered against it, wishing I had a thick jacket like the one Marcus was wearing. The front of my car looked like the face of a boxer who has just lost a fight. The passenger side headlight was busted out, and the remaining one looked like a swollen open eye. Part of the plastic bumper was rubbing against the ground on the passenger side, and the hood was smashed in. A little more driving time and the whole car would be history. "Oh, man," Marcus said, laughing. "I know," I said, still trying to figure out if we could pull the front bumper off so that it wouldn't fall off while we drove. I really smacked it up. "Not that, stupid," he said. He slapped my arm and pointed across the parking lot. "I'm talking about her." He was pointing at a really fat, dark-haired girl at the other end of the lot. Zombie. I could tell by the way she walked. At first I thought she was completely naked, but when she moved I could see a flash of white underwear appearing and then disappearing into the folds of her thighs. She pivoted around on one foot and then the other in an uncertain, tottering kind of way, so that we saw her in profile with every step. There was a large, nasty gash across the top of her leg that went from the top of her knee all the way up to her hip, that looked like rotten, blackened flesh. "Is she wearing a thong?" Marcus said, still laughing. "Seen all night." "Shut up, Marcus." The woman kept walking toward us at the same laborious pace, but she was still far enough away that we could have just climbed into the car and left. "God, she's really fat." "Forget about her, Marcus. Let's get going." "Hold on, would you? I mean, look at that. I didn't know they made thongs that big. That thing must be holding on for dear life. Help! Help me! I'm breaking." "For God's sake, Marcus, drop it, would you?" Marcus was a clown. That was just his way. He could turn a trip to internal affairs into a stand-up routine and still write a report good enough to get us out of just about any kind of trouble. But this time I wasn't amused. I found it more annoying than anything else. "Let's just go, Marcus." "You're seeing this, right? Look at that. It's like trying to cover up a watermelon with a rubber band. You mean to tell me you don't think that's funny?" "She's a zombie, Marcus. Zombies aren't funny." "You have to get your humor wherever you find it, Eddie." "I'd like to go now, please." "Hey, what do you suppose she's at right now? About 20 yards? I gauged the distance. "Yeah, about that." "I'll bet you a pack of smokes you can't land a headshot in less than 3 shots. What do you say? Come on. I'll make it a whole carton. I know you want some. I'd do it myself, but I'm out of ammo." "There's a whole case in the car," I said, and walked over to the driver's side door. "You can have all you want if you shut up and get in." "Just a second. Come on. Give it just one shot." "No." "About 15 yards now, I bet. Piece of cake. Even you could hit her from here. Come on. You're not scared, are you?" "No." I know he thought he was being funny, but he sounded cruel to me. Marcus could fight like a son of a bitch, and I'd seen him rip up plenty of bad guys, but I had never known him to be unnecessarily cruel, and that's the way he sounded to me just then. It disturbed me. He snorted. "I bet you couldn't have hit her any—" I glanced over at him. "What is it?" "Eddie," he said, "there's something I forgot to tell you." "What?" I followed his gaze. 4 zombies were coming around the corner of the store. He watched them as they came around the dumpster, and then looked back at me. "You said you've got some bullets in the car, right?" "Yeah." "Fat chick," he said, pointing over my shoulder with his chin. I turned. The fat woman was way too close to ignore anymore. I fired 1 shot into her forehead, and then turned back to Marcus. "You're killing me, Marcus. What did you forget to tell me?" He looked at the fat woman on the pavement and then back at the zombies near the corner. Remember how I told you I hit an oak tree about 4 blocks back? Just tell me, Marcus." "We're about to have company," he said. "A lot of it, actually." "Great," I said. "Now will you get in the car?" "Yeah," he said. "Okay." I started the car and Marcus climbed in. The 4 zombies stepped onto the pavement. Beyond them I could see more zombies coming our way. I backed the car up and took off in the opposite direction. At the exit from the parking lot, we hit a dip and the front end crunched against the pavement. We ended up driving over the bumper. "Ouch," Marcus said. "Next car we get, I'm driving." Chapter 18. As we drove away, Marcus reloaded his pistol and his 2 extra magazines. He was fast with it, too. Shooting came naturally for him. While we drove, he told me about his first encounter with the zombies. "I shot the couple that used to live downstairs from me," he said. "Remember them? The woman had that nasty thing on her nose." "I remember." "Yeah, well, I heard her screaming. I was sitting there watching all that crazy shit on the news, and I hear her screaming bloody murder. So I go down there, and there's the husband eating her. I shot him. I shot her, too, just in case. After that, I dragged them out to the dumpster. And you're not going to believe this. I was headed back to my truck after dumping the bodies, and I hear all this screaming coming from the pool. It was like everybody in the whole damn complex didn't know what else to do besides scream. I went down there and saw this old woman standing next to the pool, and a zombie floating face down in the water with a cloud of blood all around him. She wanted me to jump him and pull him out, and I was like, "Lady, after what I've just seen, there's no way in hell I'm going to give that guy mouth-to-mouth. He'd probably try to bite my tongue off." "I don't think you're supposed to use your tongue when you do mouth-to-mouth," I said. "Then you ain't doing it right, brother. But seriously, somebody ought to burn up all those bodies. Just you watch. In 2 days, this whole city is going to smell like I don't know what. It'll be bad, though." I hadn't thought of that. But then I had other things on my mind last time I was home. "You know, you and April were probably one of the last people to have a cell phone conversation tonight. Right before I turned off the TV, I heard the news saying they'd lost all communication with their people in the field. No cell phone, no radios, no nothing." "Really?" "That's what I heard." He suddenly got very excited and waved his hand at some zombies walking across a nearby yard. "Hey, slow up! Over there! That's the asshole who complained on me last month. Slow up and let me see if I can pop him." "Have you lost your mind, Marcus?" "I don't think so," he said, aping my seriousness. "Come on, pull over. It'll only take me a second. I'll fucking teach that guy about complaining on me." I kept on driving. "Hey, wait a minute." Marcus watched the guy fall behind, his damaged legs unable to keep up with the car. "Damn it, Eddie. When will I ever get a chance like this again? Come on, he's getting away." "No." "God damn it, Eddie. Doesn't April let you take your sense of humor to work anymore?" I didn't answer him. That was the second time he had mentioned April so casually, like there was absolutely nothing wrong, and it was pissing me off. He noticed he'd upset me. "Hey, I'm sorry, Eddie. I know you're worried sick about her. We're going to find her." "I hope so." I pretended like I was having trouble reading the street signs, but he knew it was just an act. "She's a smart girl," he said. "She'll know what to do when she has to." "How do you know that, Marcus? Do you know what to do?" "I sure as hell don't. I haven't got a fucking clue. This whole night's been one messed-up clusterfuck." Marcus folded the lid back over the case of bullets and set it on the floorboard next to his feet. Then he turned and watched the houses go by. It was his way of telling me he understood, and I appreciated it. "These traffic cars are pretty nice," he said, after we had driven a few minutes in silence. He played with the trash bag that was draped over the passenger door and laughed to himself. "Where did you say you found it?" "On Fletcher." "Fletcher? Isn't that in the 23 side?" "Right on the boundary line between the downtown and west divisions." What do you suppose a traffic guy was doing there? I thought they usually stuck to the freeways. I don't know, I said. Well, he's got a video camera. Marcus looked over the little index card-sized monitor mounted between the sun visors and played with the controls. He was like that with electronic stuff. Any gadget at all, if it was in front of him, he couldn't leave it alone until he had it figured out. Did you watch this already? I saw the picture come up. No, I said. And then, after a pause, I didn't have time. As soon as I found the car, I went straight to Carlos Williams's house. He gave me a look out of the corner of his eye, and I told him how Carlos had died, and what he had said about his son right before he shot himself. You didn't, I nodded. You went to see his family? Yes. Eddie, he said, shaking his head slowly, sadly, why do you do that to yourself? I swear sometimes you can be a real idiot, you know that? He was right, of course, but it didn't feel like he was right. You're too damn sentimental. That's your problem. Probably, I said. There's no probably about it. I know I'm right. We drove on in silence for the next few blocks while he tried to figure out how to replay the tape. All the easy ways to get to the freeway were blocked up, and I was forced to use some of the smaller streets and alleyways. What's wrong with taking Malden? He asked, glancing at the street we had just passed. That's a straight shot. Too many businesses on Malden, I said. I want to avoid any large crowds if we can help it. Oh. He looked disappointed. He kept working on the video until he got it. Oh, yeah. Here we go. I couldn't really watch it and drive at the same time, but with Marcus narrating the whole thing, I didn't really need to. Okay, he said. There he is. Who's that? Do you recognize him? Looks like Wainscott to me. I glanced over, but the monitor was so small I couldn't see anything. The figures on the screen looked far away and dark. There goes his gun. He sees something. Damn it, can't do much with the focus. What's he looking at? There he goes. Wait. No. Now he's off camera. Marcus kept watching, pushing the fast-forward button and watching some more, but that appeared to be the end of it. That didn't tell us a damn thing, he said. He wasn't anywhere around when I found the car. Yeah, he probably got eaten. Nice. What? Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Prissy. I'm sure it was all hugs and kisses when he met the zombies. Go to hell, Marcus. Find a parking spot, brother, he said with a dismissive wave of his hand at the world outside our car. We're already there. Chapter 19. Marcus was admiring the brand-new shotgun. Traffic really did get the best toys. On patrol, officers use the barrel of the shotgun as a trash can. You find everything from gum wrappers to chicken bones stuffed down inside them. And when quail season opens, you're lucky if there's a gun in your car at all. He worked the action and ejected one of the green beanbag shells from the gun. Useless, he said, and tossed the beanbag out the window. Oh, I said, I've got real shells for that thing. Check that green box over there. Where? It's over there. I don't know. Under the seat, maybe. Got it, he said, and started loading up the magazine tube. Where did you get these from, anyway? From home? Your house? Yeah. I didn't know you had a shotgun. It's just an old skeet gun. Nothing special. A Ruger Red Label over and under. I haven't shot it since before April and I got married. That's too bad. Ruger makes a good gun. He racked the shotgun's action, and a huge smile lit up his face. God, I just love the way that sounds, don't you? You can use it if you want. You don't mind? No, of course not. You're the one riding shotgun. Cool. Thanks. He looked up from the shotgun, and I could tell he was checking his mental map of the area. You're not going to go through the medical center, are you? No. I figured it'd be best if we went around. Probably so. The news was saying that the hospitals are all totally overrun. They got it early, from what it sounded like. We kept to the edge of the medical center, but even from there it was obvious the destruction was total. Most of the major roads were so overrun with traffic that there was no hope of getting into the hospitals anymore. The entire area was choked off. As we hopped a curb and drove through the grass to get around a clogged section of Fielding Street, I looked to my left and let my eyes follow the direction all those cars were facing. Fielding was flanked on both sides by massive earthen embankments that stretched up from the street level to the businesses at the top of the ridge. People had actually tried to drive up those embankments, and it looked like a lot of them had rolled their vehicles before they got anywhere. The street reminded me of a wild African river after a flood, the kind they show on nature documentaries, with the carcasses of thousands of animals floating on the surface and crowding the banks. I put us back on the road. Even though I was trying to avoid the more commercial areas, it was impossible to stay completely away and still get to where we were going. And we couldn't avoid the zombies either. They were all over the street, and as we drove past groups of them that turned and stumbled after us, I began to understand just how far and fast the outbreak had spread. We drove past so much destruction that I stopped trying to add it all up. Marcus didn't seem to care, though. He hummed to himself happily like he did this every day. "I think you're going to have a hard time getting through at Middleton," Marcus said. "Why at Middleton?" "They put up a lot of stuff through there since you left. A lot of businesses. See?" He pointed ahead of us where the traffic suddenly became too thick to pass. "That's what I was talking about." I stopped the car and looked out over a sea of frozen traffic. Zombies staggered between the cars. There didn't seem to be a gap large enough to drive through, and there were hundreds of zombies entering the street on both sides of us. In the time it took to figure out where they were coming from, we were surrounded. "Looks like we'll have to back up and try to go around," I said. "Not yet," Marcus said. Then all of a sudden, he pushed the door open and jumped out, leaving me staring after him with my mouth gaping open. "What the? Hey, wait!" I watched him run straight into that crowd of zombies, and I thought, he has gone insane. Even worse was that he expected me to follow him, just like it was another Friday night bar fight. "You idiot," I said to him, and the next thing I knew, I was standing outside the car, gun in hand. I was looking at a sea of zombies in every direction. There had to be 1,000 or more. But Marcus never hesitated. He fired all 6 rounds from the shotgun and then started swinging the shotgun around like a club, tearing a path right into the middle of the crowd and whooping it up like he was the whole damn rebel army rolled into one man. He actually taunted them as they closed up behind him. And then his rebel yell was drowned out by the bark of his pistol. I caught glimpses of muzzle fire as he moved through the crowd. He looked like a cowboy out of some old-time movie, strutting through the crowd with his gun blazing. But the zombies weren't just closing in on him. They were all around me, too. Just before I jumped back inside the car, I saw Marcus about 50 yards away. He jumped into the open bed of an abandoned pickup truck and started shooting. I put the car in gear and drove straight into the crowd, mowing down bodies as I went. I kept my eyes on him as I plowed through the sea of bodies, ignoring their faces as they rolled off the hood. I locked up the brakes and spun the car around so that the passenger door was as close to him as I could get it. The car slid sideways into the crowd, and a few of the zombies were thrown with such force that when they slammed into the side of the truck that Marcus was firing from, the impact nearly knocked him off his feet. He almost went over the side. I shot a zombie that was trying to climb through the passenger window and cleared the way for Marcus to jump back in the car. He was hollering the whole time, still firing out the passenger window as I put the car into reverse and mashed down on the accelerator. The back tires broke loose. Smoke was everywhere. It was like driving too fast through a bumpy field. Bodies were being thrown out of the way or pushed under and run over, and there were so many of them that the car nearly high-centered on top of a still-moving pile of bodies before our momentum put us back on the asphalt. "Go, go, go!" he yelled, laughing like he had never seen anything so funny in his whole life. "That's it. You're tearing them up." I kept on the gas until we cleared the last of the crowd, and then a little farther after that. We ended up going over a curb and crashing into the drive-through order box at a burger barn before I got the car to stop. Marcus was laughing his head off. I wanted to punch his lights out. But before I got the chance, he put his hands up and said, "No. No way, Eddie. You do not get to say a damn word. You know why? Because that was awesome. That was absolutely fucking awesome." I looked at him and wondered who put this idiot in the car with me. The whole time I was gripping the wheel so tight my fingers were turning white. "Well?" I didn't say anything. "Come on, Eddie. Say something. You were amazing. And I know those zombies back there were impressed." "Impressed?" "Yeah. Well, they're zombies, of course, so they can't be that impressed. But damn, Eddie. You may not be able to shoot your way out of a wet paper bag, but brother, do you know how to drive? That was by far the coolest thing I have ever seen you do." And then he started laughing again. I made a fist and got ready to use it. "No," he said, still laughing. "What in the hell is—" "No," he said. My frustration came out as one long, slow hiss. Instead of punching him or choking him, I gripped the steering wheel. "Say it," he said. "Come on, say it." "Screw you, Marcus." But the moment to hit him passed, and my anger settled to a simmer. We were still stuck in the parking lot, and we had to figure a way out that put us on the other side of all those zombies. The lot was edged all the way around by a 2-foot-high cement wall, and the only way out was starting to fill up with zombies. "Just plow through them again," Marcus offered. I punched it, heading for the center of the crowd. We hit the exit going way too fast and swung a hard right onto Nightingale. The car was swaying all over the place from all the damage I had done to the suspension, and when we made the turn, the back end came around on me and whipped through the crowd. They didn't slow us down, though, and as I straightened out the back end, Marcus leaned out the window and started firing at them like he actually stood a prayer of landing a kill shot. "Awesome," he said, ducking back into the car. "Absolutely awesome." "You're a moron." "You know," he said, and his voice had that annoying edge to it that told me he was about to tease me, "I refuse to let a bunch of zombies ruin the end of the world for me. And you either, for that matter." 3 blocks over, we turned south again and tried to finish our course around the medical center. We got as far as Cotton Street before another traffic jam caused us to turn into a strip center parking lot. "Any ideas?" I asked, looking over the wreckage. "There's a service drive around back for the loading docks. I bet we can cut through there." "Are you sure?" "Honest," he said. "I've been through there before." "Okay," I said, and turned the car toward the back of the building. The drive went around the side of the building, then turned to the left and went straight along the back wall. We were only able to make it about halfway down the alley. There was a high concrete wall on the right and a large brown truck parked along the left wall. Between the two of them was a space about half as wide as the car. "Looks like we go—" But he didn't get to finish his sentence. A fast-moving zombie broke his window and tried to pull him out of the car by his collar. The zombie clawed at him, but Marcus was faster, and his movements, once he got over the initial shock, were deliberate. He pushed the zombie's arm back into his face and grabbed him by the neck. Once he had his grip, he didn't let go. He yanked the zombie's head down into the door again and again until the thing grew slack in his grip and collapsed to the ground. "They're behind us," I said, looking back at a small group of them coming our way. "Go," he said. "Mow them down." I put the car in reverse and punched it. We were 20, maybe 30 miles an hour when we hit the closest zombie. The car lurched up, and then it seemed like the back of the car just exploded. There was a rush of color and broken glass as the zombie came through the back windshield and crashed face first into the plexiglass prisoner cage, separating the front and back seats. Everything inside the car rolled forward with the impact. In the rush, I lost control and scraped up against the concrete wall, killing our momentum. By the time I regained control and rolled the car to a stop, the zombie in the back seat was moving, fumbling at the plexiglass. With exaggerated calm, Marcus turned to me and said, "Eddie, get us out of here, please." The zombie in the back seat was a huge man, and he completely filled up the back seat. He slapped his broken hands against the plexiglass and pressed his red face against it, biting at it and gouging it with his teeth. If he could have eaten his way through, I know he would have. He was so big that I couldn't see around him. I was trying to back us out of the alley and then out to the parking lot, but there was so much going on that there was no way for me to do it without hitting just about everything. By the time we made it out to the parking lot, Marcus had had enough. He turned around in his seat, put his back against the dashboard, and pointed his pistol at the zombie. "No," I said, and shielded my face with my hand. "What?" he said. "Not in the car, you dumbass! What are you, fucking nuts?" "You keep asking me that," he said. "Pretty soon I'm going to think you mean it." I hit one of those concrete pillars they mount light poles on, and it knocked Marcus off the dashboard. "That's it," he said, as he righted himself. He opened the car door and got out. "What are you doing?" He stepped to the passenger side back window and pointed his gun at the zombie in our back seat. "No," I said, trying to get my door open. But I was still in the car when he started firing. The window blew apart, and as I tumbled out onto the pavement, I saw the body in the back seat convulsing with the impacts. "God damn it, Marcus!" "What? What in the hell is wrong with you?" "What?" We were starting to draw a crowd, and two of them were fast movers. I could see them pushing the other zombies out of the way. "Behind you," I said. He turned, aimed, and shot two fast movers like it was target practice. They hit the ground and were still twitching when he turned back to me. "What did I do?" The crowd around us was starting to get thicker, and I didn't feel like arguing with him. "Just get in the car, Marcus." "No way. First you tell me why you're being such an old woman about this. What the hell did I do?" "Are you nuts?" He pointed over my shoulder with his gun. "There's a couple behind you," he said. "Over there." I turned around and saw two zombies in medical scrubs stepping off the grass about 10 yards away. They were slow ones, though, and one had been horribly mauled. He was missing an eye, and where it had once been, there were only streaks of blackened blood. I took aim and shot each one in the forehead. "Time to go," I said. "No. You wanted to talk, so let's talk. I want you to tell me what it is that I'm doing that's pissing you off so much." "Marcus, please." "Not yet. Tell me." "We're surrounded." "I can see that. Come on, talk to me. I want to hear what's on your mind." "Marcus, please. Get back in the car and let's go." The zombies were moving in from every side now, but Marcus just stood there, waiting for me to crack. He was actually smiling. The crazy bastard was actually smiling. "Behind you," he said. I turned and fired at a woman in a blue dress. My first shot hit her in the cheek, but I was more careful with my second shot and put her down for good. "Nice," Marcus said. "Shut up." "I'm waiting on you," he said. "You tell me why you're acting so alive." I pointed behind him, and he turned and dropped a zombie with a one-handed shot. He made it look so easy. "Well?" "Don't try to turn this around on me, Marcus. You're the one who thinks he's some kind of fucking cowboy out here. I just want to get home to my family." "Cowboy? You think I'm some kind of cowboy? What does that mean exactly?" "Behind you," I said. "You too? Left or right?" "Your left." We both put our zombies down. Marcus was having the time of his life, which pissed me off more than anything else. To him this was some kind of carnival shooting gallery, and he was just plunking away like there were no consequences to any of it. And he had no idea why what he did bothered me so much. I looked around and realized there was no way we could keep up a safe position where we were. There were just too many of them, and more were gathering at the edges of the parking lot. "Marcus, I am scared shitless, okay? Are you happy? You made me say it. Call me names if you want to, but I am scared out of my mind. I'm scared for what's going to happen to me, and I'm scared for what's going to happen to my family. I have no idea what to do, and I'm stuck in the middle of a bunch of zombies, and it's all just a fucking game to you. That's why I'm acting this way." "I do not think this is a game," he said. "Whatever. Behind you." He turned and fired a couple of times. Then he said, "You're going to make it, Eddie. Don't worry." "Yeah, well, I am worried, Marcus. I don't want to be out here any longer than I have to be. I want to know that my wife and my son are safe, and I want to be with them. Just because you don't have anybody waiting at home doesn't mean the rest of us aren't scared to death for our families." The amusement went out of his face when I said that last part, and I realized that I had hurt him. Marcus had been married twice before, and both times it ended hard. He took to women like a house on fire. It was fun to watch, but the damage was usually spectacular. He pursed his lips together into a scowl. After a long pause, he said, "Behind you." I shot 2 zombies, reloaded, and shot a third before I faced Marcus again. He wouldn't look at me. "I'm sorry, Marcus, that was stupid of me." "No, it's the truth. You said it. I ain't got nothing to go home to. Hell, I'm actually kind of glad my ex-wives got turned into zombies. Serves the bitches right. And no more alimony for me." "Marcus, I'm sorry." "Stop saying that." "Behind you," I said. He shot the zombie and watched the body after it fell. I thought maybe he was going to take off on me again, but he stood his ground. A badly messed-up woman in a white shirt and no pants shambled up to him, and he waited so long to shoot her I almost did it for him. When she hit the ground, he turned around and faced me again. "Is there anything else you wanted to say to me?" "Marcus, please, let's just go." "What's the point?" "The point is my family is waiting out there somewhere. I know they are, and I have to get home to them. I want to be with them. Please, Marcus, can't you see that? Help me get home. I need you to help me." He nodded. The sadness faded from his face, and in its place the old shit-eating grin returned. "Hey, Eddie, you know I'm always there for you." I nodded and waited for him to move, but he just stood there. "Car," I said. "Now." "Anything you say." We climbed into the car and tore out of the parking lot, neither one of us saying anything until we cleared the zombie crowd. I was quiet because I was still pissed at him and embarrassed for the cruel things I had said. We had been friends for so long and relied on each other to know instinctively what the other was thinking and going to do in just about every situation that it completely floored me when he did the opposite of what I expected. I got the feeling Marcus was quiet because he was waiting for me to come out of my stupor and see all this as some sort of cosmic joke. For him, there were no further implications to all these zombies than the end of alimony payments, and while I guess he understood my urgency on some level, he could never share it. His laughter caught me off guard. When he saw me shaking my head at him, he said, "What? You don't honestly expect me to sit here and mope with you until all this just goes away, do you? You realize there's a dead body in the back seat, don't you?" "Who, him? Well, it's not like he wasn't a zombie already, and besides, I'm not the one who put him there, remember?" "Yeah." "Oh, for Christ's sake, will you stop it? I can't ride in the same car with you if you're just going to cry about how bad all this is." He paused for me to say something, but when I didn't, he said, "Look, if it'll make you feel any better, we can pull over and get him out of here." "Yeah," I said. "Let's do that." "Okay." He looked back at the body and whistled. "Damn, he's a big boy. What do you think he weighs, about 260, 280? "Probably." "Yeah, well, you're going to have to help me with him. There's no way I'm going to be able to lift him out of here by myself." I looked at what I could see of the body in the rearview mirror. It was covered in blood. "Okay, there should be some gloves in the trunk." "Good. Pull over someplace where we can dump him." But we had to go all the way up Dickinson before I could find a safe place to pull over. There were no businesses down Dickinson and no zombies. "This looks okay," Marcus said. "Stop here and we'll toss him out." I got the gloves from the trunk and Marcus opened the back door. "Oh, man," he said, turning his face away from the sight. "You really fucked this guy up." "Me? What the hell are you talking about? Those are your bullet holes in him. Relax, relax. Just come here and help me with him. I handed Marcus a pair of gloves. The man was on his back, one of his heavy slab-o-meat arms bent